All right. So, talking about divine helpers, and after posting my three-part about how I have recognized how God has given me divine helpers, I've had a lot of people reach out, and I even have one person that reached out, and they were saying that they believe that God is no longer with them or communicating with them because of people that they have around them. And I felt that it's important to recognize that the different phases that we are in life, a lot of times is going to impact where your divine helpers are. So I sent as a message, because the person sent it as a message. I replied in the message, and one of the things that I thought that was very important was to make sure that the person recognized that you may be in a different phase in life. God has already given you the word, because, and the reason why I say that is the individual said, well, I believe that it is it is someone that I'm connected to that's preventing me from being able to identify my divine helpers. And first things first about divine helpers, before you can even get to that conversation, you have to know what it is that God is calling you to do. You have to come into agreement with what it is that God is calling you to do. Whether it's something you want to do, but recognizing that my purpose is this specific thing. My purpose, like I have been saying, is to be the bridge of love that God has called me to be. Understanding that I'm being called to be a bridge of love for those who do not feel God's love, for those who believe that because of circumstances like divorce, they no longer can be used by God. So until we change our mind, until we change our perspective about our situation, we will not be able to truly recognize our calling and our purpose in life. After you've identified your purpose in life, after you've identified the fact that God is still here for you, God is still with you, God is still using you, then you can be in a position where spiritually you are ready to recognize your divine helpers. Because something that we need to understand is not just about you identifying them. I think one of the key things, and this is what I have learned, is they identify you. They identify you. So thinking about who are my divine helpers, that's not how it works. You are not just out there trying to point people out. Again, when we do not understand what God's purpose is for us, when we do not understand that it is not about us, it is not about how I think things should go, it's not about how I'm now dealing with circumstances that I'm facing. No, it is about God. I know that where I am right now, you are still in control. I know that you have a purpose for me because your word said that you have called me for a purpose. You've justified me as well. And when I understand that and I believe it, then now I open up the door. I remove a veil, and those who are called to me, so my divine helpers, now they can see where they need to step in and help, where they can add value. But one, if you don't know who you are in God and identified, number two, identified your purpose, there's no room yet for your divine helpers. And I think that that's one of the things that we don't recognize. You first have to take that step of seeking God's will and purpose for your life. Now that you understand God's purpose for your life, you have to get out of the way of trying to do it your way. You have to recognize that you are not the person. You are not the one that's in control anymore. So we basically surrender. We relinquish control, and we are basically saying, God, I trust you. I know that you have a call for my life. I have identified what this purpose is, but I may not know, I may not understand exactly what it is, but I trust you enough. I trust you enough to say, God, now that I recognize who I am in you, now that I recognize that you still have a purpose for me, regardless of what I have gone through, regardless of the decisions that I've made, because I recognize your love. I recognize that you have a purpose for me. I now am ready to surrender. I'm now ready to move in the way that you would have me move. And the reason why that's so difficult for people is because it's a matter of control. I want to control the outcome. I want to control the process. When you surrender to God, there's no control for you anymore. You have to be ready and willing to move how he called you to move. When we take our hands off of it and God takes full control, your divine helpers are able to identify the value, because if they're listening to God, you will show up to them in a way where that's where God is letting them know that's where you're going to add value. This is what you're going to do in this person's life. But if we don't recognize our purpose, if we feel like this circumstance is what defines me, you have removed yourself from God's will. If this circumstance defines you, you have not recognized the purpose that God have in your life. And that is very important, to get to that place of recognizing and identifying your divine helpers. Now, another thing outside of control, outside of just simply saying, okay, God, I relinquish, you also need to be seeking God throughout the process. For example, for me, I was giving my testimony and thanking God for revealing to me that these individuals that are reaching out, not everyone that reach out, right? We're talking about those that are sent by God. That's why we refer to them as divine helpers. I had to take a step out on faith and recognize, God, this is what you're calling me to. Whether I want it, whether it's something that I had written down on my plan, my board, my vision board, but it's something that you want me to do, God. And I thank God for that. But then I had to continue taking steps. I had to continue saying yes, even when it was scary. I had to take another step. When God is telling me, say this word, do this thing, reach out to this person, I had to keep saying yes. I can't say yes once. You cannot say yes once. You have to keep saying yes. You have to keep seeking God, because remember, it's not your will, it's his will. You didn't give yourself this purpose. You have recognized and you have signed up for this purpose. You're saying, yes, God. Yes. So the moment you do that, your divine helpers, who are also saying, yes, God, and they're also thanking God for using them and the way that he intends to in your life, you can now recognize them when they reach out, because there are those who see you moving. They see that you're making steps, and they just want to be a part because they have an idea of where you're going. That's not a divine helper. There are people who see a benefit for themselves and they just want to tag along and piggyback on what you're doing. That's not a divine helper. The divine helpers, they're not really seeking anything for what they're doing in your life, because why? They're already fulfilling their own purpose. And you recognize that. The people that God sent to you, they already are providing value to others in a specific way. They are very clear and unapologetic of their purpose. The fact that they've seen their purpose, they can identify when there is someone that connects with that purpose that they now have to add value to. So those are some of the key things about recognizing your divine helper. What you need to do for you, what you need to recognize, you do have to let go of that control. It is not easy. It is not easy, especially if you're the one that people rely on. If you know that if I do it, it'll be done well. So for those of us that have that mindset, you know what, I'll just do it because I know it'll be done right. You have to surrender. You have to let go of that control, and you have to recognize who you are in Christ. You have to recognize what your purpose is. What have you destined me to? And when you recognize that, your vision change, your perspective change. One, you're able to decipher, you're able to recognize those who are not called by God to come alongside you to help you. And then on the flip side, you are able to recognize those people who are called to you. They have purpose as well. They are clear and unapologetic about what God has called them to, and they're already walking in that. That's why as they were walking, as they're moving, they see you in yours, and there's that connection. They're not seeking anything in return. It's not that we don't give them anything in return. It's not that we can't add value to them, but just that moment, just the identification of that person is that they are not looking for something in return, but they have connected. They have connected to you. They have recognized that what you are doing, what you're called to, it's so bright. It's so clear. Sometimes they even see the vision. They connect to the vision and they see it even clearer than you. They start adding to it in a way where you're like, oh my goodness, I would not have thought of that. And boom, that's another example of how you must be sent by God, because how did I not see this? But it's almost like an aha moment. These are just some of the ways that you recognize, some of the ways that you see that I'm not in this alone. Some of the ways that God show I'm right here in it with you. But the more you surrender to me, the more I can trust you with. So as we surrender, we gain God's trust. As we surrender, we identify our divine helpers. As we surrender, our divine helpers identify us. They don't only identify us, but they identify the value that they can add. Because one thing I can say for all of my divine helpers, they never just call and said, what can I do? That's not really how it works. They call you, they reach out to you, and they let you know where they believe value can be added. They let you know like, hey, I have this thing, or I know this thing, or I'm connected to this thing, and this thing is exactly for you. This thing can add so much value to you. And once they do that, again, it requires moving forward in what it is that they've given you. When you're walking with God, you're not going to be deceived. But when you're relying on yourself, your own power, your own knowledge, and worldly wisdom, you can be deceived because those around you know the same thing. But there's something different when it's with God. There's something different when it is led by the Spirit and not just by the flesh, not by our mind, not by how the world does it, or this is how it works. No, there's a difference. There's a separation. So those are the things that the steps you have to make. You have to identify who you are in God. You have to identify your purpose, the purpose God has called you to. Not just what you like, not just what you want to do, but the purpose that God has called you to. Once you've identified that, you now have to relinquish control. Okay? You have to say, I surrender, and truly surrender. It's not a one-day thing. It's not a 2-day thing. It is a process. It is a process of relinquishing control. It's a process of surrendering. And as you do that, you will then continue to move further towards your divine helpers. Okay, those are the things that you need to do. Those are just step one, right? That's just the first step in the process to getting yourself ready for your divine helpers. And then once you now are ready for your divine helpers, you have relinquished control. You recognize your purpose. You know now that God is using me. God does have a purpose for me. This is what this purpose is. God, I trust you. And now you start moving in that. From there, you have now opened up the door for you to recognize those who are coming that are not divine helpers, those who are coming just seeking something from you, seeking to gain. Those are not your divine helpers. Divine helpers now, once you've done those steps, they now, because remember, we identified, they know their purpose as well. They are walking in God's will as well. That's why when God is saying that you're the person that they should connect to, they can hear him. And when they reach out to you, because this is how it happens, either they reach out to you or in your spirit, you know, you keep saying it, okay, I need to call this person, or you see what they're doing, like this person, oh my gosh. But let's talk about when they reach out to you. Let's stay there. When they reach out to you, they don't call you saying, oh, what could I do to help? No. That's someone who's just interested in what you're doing. That's not a divine helper. A divine helper, when they contact you with a vision already. They contact you and they know exactly where they can add value to you. They know where you need to be connected to, who needs to come in, and they come through the front door straight up with value. From there, you're able to recognize that this person is the exact fit, because you were already praying, right? Because we're surrendering, relinquishing control. We're surrendering, relinquishing control. You're praying while you're surrendering, relinquishing control, because only God can help you do that. For those of us, and I keep on saying those of us who like to be in control of the result, the outcome, and the process, it's not easy. But once you do that, then you recognize that God, exactly what I was praying for, look how this person brought it up. That's not a coincidence. What I call is a Christ incidence. You've now opened up the door. You've left room for God to do what he said he's going to do in your life. And your divine helper identify you. They add that value to you. And then you are able to recognize value that you can add to them as well. It really is a circle. It really is a circle. But it is important that we ourselves get out of the way. It's important that we ourselves recognize that circumstances do not define. It is not going to define the fact that from the time you were in your mother's womb, God already identified you, already made the announcements in your life. It's not going to change it. I know that, for example, we have those that face divorce and just feel like I cannot be used by God anymore. Yes, there was a time where I had purpose. There was a time where God was going to use me, but no, not anymore. He can't use me anymore. And that's just not the truth. That's not the truth. Your God is always with you. Understanding that, removing the shame, removing yourself from the fear of the unknown, open you up to God's will and God's purpose for your life. So those are the steps and the things that we need to identify our divine helpers. And it is important that we do not delay. Okay? We cannot delay in moving forward in what God is calling us to, because like I've learned, because I'm talking from experience, like I've learned, when you are not walking in your purpose, there are people suffering. There's people that need you, not just anybody. They need you, and their lives. And some people say this is dramatic. No, it's not. Their lives are connected to you. So how they prosper, how they move, how they grow, what they know, what they're empowered to do is connected to you, your voice, and the purpose that God has in your life. I thank God that I've recognized this. I thank God because every day I'm moving towards, I still need him every day to get it done. And even today I have a testimony that God sent one of my divine helpers. And I think it's because I have been clear about the fact that he's moving in my life. I would love the same for you. Do not delay. You're not hearing this by chance. You're not hearing this by coincidence. You're not hearing this just to hear it. It is because God's purpose is alive in you. You need to fulfill it. And there are divine helpers that are there waiting to find you. When you relinquish the control, when you open up that door, they can see you and they will be able to recognize the value that they're supposed to bring in your life. So that is how we recognize our divine helpers. I hope that this was helpful, and see you when we come back on our live. Thank you for joining me.